Now, as you inhale, bring your awareness above your crown, floating 12 inches above your head. See your body, visualize the body. While keeping your attention focused on the body, gently look around you. Look at the color surrounding your physical body. Do you notice a color, a texture? Maybe you see some movements. Mentally make a note of the color, the texture, and the movements. I am not the body. Visualize your physical body dissolving away into nothingness. You will still see some residual colors. Take a deep breath. I am not the emotions. Look at the colors that are now coming into focus. Are they sparkling? Are they shining and shimmering? Maybe they're cloudy or swirling with light. Make a note of these colors as well. For some of you, it may be very fast, maybe very turbulent. For some of you, it may be slow, sedate, unwinding. Gently say, I am not the emotions, I am not the thoughts. Your astral body or your emotional body is also fading away. You are now looking at your mental body. You should see lighter colors, brighter colors. Make a note of the degree of intensity of the light, of the amount of luminosity. Pay attention to the brightness. Pay attention to any shapes or any forms that you might see swirling around your mental body. Mentally say, I am not the thoughts. I am not even the mind. And visualize your mental body also dissolving away into nothingness. Take a deep breath and relax your body. Just let go. Simply let go and enjoy this feeling of floating, of nothingness. Release and let go. Continue to breathe slowly and deeply. And as you inhale, be aware of a light surrounding you, approaching you. Be aware of the color, this brilliant, liquid, white color. Mentally affirm, I am that I am. I am the soul. Visualize yourself that this white light is surrounding you, pervading you, and your consciousness is expanding in all directions, upward, below, in all the 8 directions, rapidly, infinitely. You are everywhere. You are also nowhere. You, the soul, are a being of light, of pure consciousness. I, the soul, am a spiritual being of divine light, divine love, divine power. I am connected to my higher soul. I am one with my higher soul. I am that I am. I am a child of God. I am connected with God. I am one with God. I am one with all. Visualize the entire planet Earth. You can see the light surrounding beautiful Mother Earth. And as you see the light, gently return. Return to your body. Return back fully and completely. Move your fingers. Move your legs. Return to your body and open your eyes with the biggest smile you have ever smiled in your life. Okay, maybe the second biggest smile. We usually keep the biggest smile for think of a happy event in Twin Hearts. The purpose of this short exercise was to demonstrate that while we are not the body, not the emotions, not the thoughts, there exist a lot of other energies which are surrounding us. So as you zoomed out of your physical body, as you tuned out, you might have noted some colors and shapes. If you want to share in the chat, you can write down over there about what are the colors and shapes that you saw. And as we go through some of the slides, some of the plates, we'll be able to correlate maybe some of the colors and emotions which are surrounding our space. Okay, so that said, let us now begin the presentation on thought forms. I'm sharing my screen. Can you see my screen? Okay, so as you can see, thought forms was written by Annie Besant and C.W. Leadbeater way back in the turn of the last century, back in 1901. Okay, and they went into a lot of detailed clairvoyant studies and investigations into what this whole structure and functions are about. Now, we've heard of this expression that thoughts are things, but not very many people have a very clear idea or concept of what is a thought or what kind of a thing is a thought. The idea of this book on thought forms, it's a little book because it's 100 odd pages, of this book on thought forms is to give a very clear idea what these things are. Now, science for a very long time has been investigating the paranormal and the supernatural. And in their researches so far, it has used a lot of techniques and methods to investigate, to find out. However, mainstream science is very different from traditional science or paranormal science. Therefore, a lot of the results are maybe a little divisive or interesting to understand because they get into realms which are from the physical to the astral. So that said, there was a person called Dr. Barduk, okay? He obtained impressions by thinking of an object, okay? And he produced the impression of that object on a certain piece of paper, on, photographic paper. Like, photography is about using light to produce impressions on film. And he was able to use this particular method to generate impressions of these thoughts, okay? So how were they produced? He created a reflection of ultraviolet rays from objects not visible, okay? Now, if you take a prism and you shine light through it, I'm sure you've seen the experiment where white light splits up into 7 or 8 different colors, right? Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet, and so forth. You can call it VIBGYOR. It was also observed in certain experiments that if a thermometer was placed on either ends of the red light or the violet light, the temperature increased or decreased. So scientists got the understanding that there exists forms of energy which are not visible. This is what led to the discovery of the infrared rays and the ultraviolet rays. Clairvoyants, they were able to produce a similar result on the photographic film of their mind. Okay, they were able to visualize or see these higher colored images, which are not visible in the physical spectrum. And these images were invisible, but they were able, with the help of sketches, to write it down, to draw it down. This particular field of study was called iconography. Now, this is different from the Christian study of iconography, which is, of course, a more esoteric, more religious subject. But as far as the study of thought forms is concerned, iconography was the impression of invisible waves regarded by the researcher as the nature of light through which the soul draws its own image. Now, this line is a very unique and powerful line because iconography here is the impression of invisible light in which the soul is drawing its own image. So you could say thought forms are the images produced by the soul. Can we say that that is one such logic which we can say? So these thought forms, these images or impressions or photographs represented etheric and magnetic phenomenon which could or could not have a physical grounding. Now, this is all quite theory and it's not all that entertaining, but it's important to understand because these people really, really worked super hard to get these results and information to us, okay? So if we look at the next slide, we can see some of the images and how they were able to produce these. So there was a person called Chladni, and he created a plate called a sound plate, okay? And this was basically a metallic apparatus on which there was a square or rectangular board. On that board, which was also metallic, he placed grains of sand. He put grains of sand, arranged it, and then he took a tuning fork. Okay, you know a tuning fork? He took a tuning fork and then he struck the edge of the board. It was his great surprise that he found that these sand particles rearranged or reorganized themselves according to the frequency that the tuning fork was vibrating at. So if you look at figure 2, which are the forms produced in sound, you can see some of the really intricate shapes and patterns which were drawn simply by sand interacting with sound. So then they started experimenting with various hertz and various frequencies, and that is how they were able to come up with the measurement of which sound frequencies correspond to which rays of light. So different colors also correspond to different sounds. Moving a little aside from this particular topic, have any of you heard the term synesthesia? Synesthesia. Synesthesia is a condition, well, medical condition, where certain people who have this condition, they can see objects, they can see sounds as light. So if you play the sound do, re, mi, fa, they can say, okay, it looks red, blue, yellow, and green. Okay. If they play some other sound, maybe a beautiful song, they're able to see the colors. So sometimes you have these musical geniuses or artistic savants who are able to create beautiful music. And when they're asked, how are you able to create such amazing music? They say, well, I can see the music come to me. I can see the music which has just floated out in front of me. It is because these people are able to visualize the sound. They're able to see the sound in varying shapes, varying sizes, and varying textures. So that said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, you have to think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. This was said by Nikola Tesla. Now, of course, Mr. Tesla is not directly connected to the book Thought Forms, but some of the experiments he conducted, well, that's what this looks like. So if you ever decide to go on YouTube and search for experiments with sand and sound, you can see that these experiments have been recreated with various frequencies and sound effects, which create these beautiful, amazing patterns on sound. So this particular apparatus, it's on a desk, a metallic frame and plate, which has the sound frequencies. You can see the two wires. They are connected to an audio generator, and the audio generator just plays back a certain frequency. The plate starts vibrating, and as the plate vibrates, it generates that kind of pattern. So these patterns start to appear on the plate. All right? So any questions so far? I hope all clear, because this is just the theory part. Okay, moving on. There are more such sounds which were produced. If you look at the top left part of the page, okay, let's start from over here, and then go just all the way down from top to bottom, you can see it starts with simple kind of rhomboid or square shapes, which then gradually start to generate more and more complex patterns. But after a certain point, the patterns, they become a little bit disunited, they become disintegrated. Okay, so if you look at the entire bottom row over here, you have fairly complex patterns, but they don't have any cohesiveness. In the context of thought forms, the simpler the thought, the easier it is to manifest or materialize. The more complex the thought, the more difficult the thought, the more difficult it is to materialize. So if you have, for those of you with an energetic healing background, if you've done pranic healing or Hatha Yoga, or especially Kriya Shakti, you know that simplicity is the key to getting results. If you have very complicated results, like, okay, I want a good life where my life has a lot of financial success, I have this much money in the bank account, this much in stocks, this much in Forex, this much in that, you keep making things complicated, life becomes equally complicated. But when you make things simpler, when you go down to the details and just sort the basic details out, life becomes a lot easier to manage. That's the same principle, okay? Thoughts become things, thought forms are real. That is the same principle which is being employed over here. As you go and look at this plate, figure 3, of the forms produced by sound. Now, we're supposed to be talking about thought forms. Why then is there an emphasis on sound? The reason is any sound has a physical effect, has a physical manifestation. If you're simply having a thought in your head and you do not verbalize it, then that thought remains just that. It becomes a thought, vague, unmanifested, unmaterialized. But when you put the sound energy into that particular thought, when you verbalize it, when you give it that sound vibration, then it begins to form, it begins to take shapes. So the thought no longer is just a thought, it is a thought form. So on this slide, we have all the various images of these patterns, various frequencies which are created. These are just for graphical purposes. These are the various experiments which they did way back more than 100 years ago, and now it's been reproduced here for us to see. In the context of thought forms, there are many other books which we must also speak of. For example, there's clairvoyance, there's the astral plane, there is man, visible and invisible, and of course, at a very, very high level, there is the solar system, which was covered in the last few weeks by Hengame. In the book, Man, Visible and Invisible, it deals with the general subject or the general concept of the aura. Now, of course, the same author who wrote this book, he is carrying this impression forward on the details of what is in the aura, what you can see, what you can expect, and what you can understand. Now, this particular slide is where the magic, where the fun really begins, because this shows the colors which are floating about in our aura. Now take a moment or two, maybe close your eyes and revisit in your mind how you looked when you saw your physical body. When we started the session, as we did the soul affirmation, as we zoomed out, we saw the physical body, the colors swathing and circling around the physical body. What colors do you notice? What patterns and shapes are visible? In this particular slide, pay attention to the top left. This is of very interesting significance because from the top left, as you go down, the colors move from light to dark. As you go from the left to the right, there is also a shading, a difference in the colors from light to dark. Blue, violets, and warm colors are the predominant colors which are shown in this particular slide. You'll also notice where this particular image is, there's certain gray shapes or dark shapes, maybe some red shapes which look like, I don't know, tiger prints. I don't know if any tigers with red colored marks though, but it looks like tiger claws or leopard spots or even a window which needs to be washed. So let's understand a little bit in detail what these shapes represent. On the left is the original shape, is the original pattern. And in the right-hand side, the correspondence, you can see that it goes from high spirituality, moves to the right to devotion and affection, to devotion to a noble ideal, pure religious feeling, and selfish religious feeling. So let's deal with the first row only at this point of time. On the extreme left, over here, you've got high spirituality. And on the extreme right, you've got selfish religious feelings. So it migrates from spirituality to religion. Spirituality moves to devotion and affection, moves to devotion to one single idea, which then becomes a religious kind of feeling, which is very pure. And then you've got a selfish religious kind of feeling. So spirituality is like, I am one with all. We are all children of God. We are all evolving. While selfish religious, now I do not mean to be politically incorrect or even political in that matter, but I'm sure we have experienced people in our lives who have very fixed notions about religion, about God, saying my God is better than your God, or if you don't believe in this religion, then you're going to go to a very unpleasant place with a lot of heat and volcanoes and etc., etc., etc. So the color moves from very light to very, very dark, okay? From high spirituality to very selfish religious feeling. Devotion and affection is connected to high spirituality, but the color you will notice is many shades darker. It's not simply that light What is this color? Lavender, lilac? I don't know. I'm not so great with colors. It's a very pinky, no, not pink. It's a lavender, violetish kind of color, while devotion, affection is almost purplish, darker. Why? Because devotion is when there is the concept of oneness takes on a slightly different form. Okay, there's more love into it, but at the same time, there is no critical thinking, or there's reduced critical thinking. In spirituality, the spiritual teachers tell us that don't question anything, don't believe anything blindly. Okay, always question, always ask, always validate. You need not come to a conclusion immediately. Look at the track record of the teacher who's talking, and based upon what he has said, you can accept his teachings as a temporary kind of truth. And you can come to your conclusion, not immediately, but 5, 10, 20 years later also. While devotion, okay, is if the teacher says something, you're like, yes, teacher. Thank you, teacher. I believe you, teacher. I'm not questioning anything, teacher. I am just following. So that's devotion and affection. It's not bad. There's no such thing as bad over here. It's simply what it is. So these colors represent that, okay? Then you've got devotion to a noble ideal, which is, you notice the color has again become much lighter, okay? And a blue kind of color. Why to a noble ideal? Is because they believe in service of humanity. Maybe they believe in bhakti yoga. Maybe they believe in jnana yoga, which is the yoga of knowledge, or bhakti yoga, which is the yoga of love. Maybe they believe in karma yoga, okay, yoga of action, or raja yoga, which is the royal yoga. Or if you're pretty smart, then you just do arhatic yoga, which is a pretty noble ideal to follow. And if you follow that perfectly and properly, well, see you in Arhat land. Moving on to devotion to a noble ideal, again, the color becomes a little darker. Okay, it's pure religious feeling, where they've taken the best parts of that love, of the devotion, of that affection, but it's concentrated to one religion. The oneness of it all is not really emphasized. Okay, there's one religion and a very pure form of that. It doesn't say that if you don't believe in my religion, you will go to hell or a hot land. I don't know what the religions say. But if it does not become all-inclusive, it is no longer considered to be high spirituality. It is a pure religious feeling. Now, if you look at the selfish religious feeling over here, look at this particular image. You see it's dark, but there are also traces of that bluish, purplish kind of color, which means they have devotion and affection. They have traces of pure religious feelings, but there is darkness, or there is confusion, or there is a lack of light. Darkness is simply a lack of light. And as we know, for those of us who have a pranic healing background or an arhatic yoga background, light means divine light, okay? Healing, health, mercy, intelligence, love, power. So if there's darkness, it means that light, love, power, all those good things, they are not present as much as they should be. So the feeling of exclusion or exclusiveness or exclusivity starts occurring when it becomes selfish, okay? Now, as we are done with this particular one, let's look at the third row and the fourth column, okay? We're looking at this one over here. Selfish affection. Please compare the internal patterns and designs of selfish affection and also selfish religious feeling. You'll notice they have the same grayish, blackish, swirling kind of thing which is inside. So selfish, now we begin to get an idea just by looking at the pictures that when it comes to selfish things, which is entirely connected to I, me, mine, or that's not yet mine, I want it. Selfish colors tend to become more closer, more grabbing, more clawing. If you look at the shapes over there, they look a little bit like, little hands which are trying to grab onto things. So selfish religious feeling, selfish affection also has this kind of darkness in it. So if you see the swirling darkness, or if you have seen it, or if you've got the impression that that color was swirling around, well, selfishness might be one of the things which we will need to work upon. So that is for the selfish part. Now let's look at the second row, okay? You've got religious feelings plus fear on one side, and on the extreme other side, you've got pride. Now, if you look at selfish religious feeling, the color, and then you go on to religious feelings plus fear. So from this one to that one, the religious feeling is there, but there's also an element of fear. The color from completely dark has become a little light, but there's gray inside it. gray colors inside it. So fear tends to have this grayish kind of color. We've read in pranic psychotherapy, and also we will read as we go through the book more and more, that cities or hospitals or graveyards or places where there's a lot of sadness, battlefields, these places have a lot of gray colored energy swirling around them. Even as pranic healers, sometimes we get flashes of clairvoyance. We're able to see, we might be able to see a lot of gray energy. If any of us have worked on cancer patients, there's a reddish, grayish kind of energy which you can sense, which you can feel. In fact, the Advanced Pranic Healing book mentions those particular colors as well. Also, if you have been doing healings for the coronavirus or the COVID-19 patients or clients, you would have found there's a lot of gray energy, a lot of fear energy in these people's systems. Why? Because they don't know. There's uncertainty. Will they survive? How much will they suffer? Will they get better soon? You know, there's all sorts of doubts which are connected all the time. Okay, this grayish kind of color is the tint of fear. Think about this. Have you ever, has someone ever come to you and with a very straight face said, we need to talk. We need to talk now. Chances are the face drains of color. And from a nice, beautiful, bubbly pink or brown or whatever, the color gray just automatically comes in. Why? Because fear. The solar plexus chakra gets all activated and say, okay, buddy, it's my time to send colors out. And the color gray starts permeating all over and fear takes over. So from high spirituality to immediately one step down, you're going from high spirituality here to immediately one step down, you've got religious feelings and fear. So what does this tell us? Someone may be extremely, extremely spiritual. They can be believing in the concepts of oneness and universality, but the moment some fear comes in, the moment there is fear, it can downgrade and become a religious feeling plus fear. They believe in spirituality, they believe in God, they believe in all the beautiful principles, but now they're scared for whatever reason. Maybe they've had negative karma materialize, maybe they realize that they're no longer part of this earth chain and they have to reincarnate later in a sub-chain. Maybe they realize that their root race has done a lot of wrong and they need to reincarnate somewhere else, which is not pleasant. For whatever reason, they could simply be feeling fear. And that fear tints the high spirituality and downgrades it to a religious kind of feeling with anxiety, panic, and all negative emotions, which doesn't allow the person to perform as miraculously as they were before. Okay, so these are the 5 or 6 topics which comes in contact with spirituality and religion. From the second row to the second column, which talks about intellect, look at the next 4. These 4 have a similar kind of color. Okay, they have yellow to a golden yellow to an ochre kind of color to a reddish, more orange kind of shade. Okay, and of course it goes from highest intellect to strong intellect to a low type of intellect and then pride. Okay, what's very interesting over here is why does it go from high intellect to low intellect and immediately move into pride? Okay, well, highest intellect, or the color yellow, which is why you will see the color yellow often connected to saints, or the golden colors, which are connected to a lot of the holy ones. If you've seen images in churches or in any religious diagrams or drawings, maybe in some Buddhist monasteries, you'll see that these great, great ones, they're often painted with a lot of yellow and gold around their aura. Have you noticed this? Okay, with these swirling lines, okay, radiating outwards all around them. It's because they are enlightened. They have illumination. They have the highest intellect. Okay, they also have a very strong intellect, which means they not only know what they need to do to progress and evolve, but they know what they need to teach others in order to help them evolve as well. So it's not just intelligence, there's also a great amount of willpower which goes in. So this light plus power, this high intellect plus strong intellect is what creates this light yellow form as well as this golden yellow color. Okay, So if you noticed while you were doing the breathing exercises and tuning in, tuning out, you might have noticed these colors around you. It is a sign of your intellect, of your intellectual progress, of your intellectual leanings. If you like to read a lot of books, if you like to engage in a lot of study groups, you would obviously be generating this kind of color and having this kind of color in your aura, okay, especially in your mental body. At later dates, maybe if we do more detailed sessions on the astral body, mental body, and the various other bodies, we can go into details in seeing how these colors interact, how they disperse throughout the body, what effects they have on specific chakras, specific organs even, how they're cooked and shared throughout the entire system, okay? So this highest intellect and strong intellect, the interplay of both of these create results. Of course, you cannot just have high intellect. There must also be a strength to them. You must produce results. Someone can be really brilliant and have all the best plans, but if there's no execution, if there's no result producing, then, well, what's the point? Okay, so this is the combination, the interplay of the highest intellect and the strong intellect. Any questions on this so far? Any questions on this so far? Or am I disconnected? There is no green here. Yeah, that's actually very interesting. Green is one shade lower. We'll come to that in just a moment. So any questions on the colors on the first two rows yet? Sympathy is green, that's right. Okay, let's go on to the low type of intellect, which is kind of self-explanatory. I mean, it has intellect, there is intelligence, but it is the kind of thing that people have for surviving in their day-to-day life. Maybe a street smart, okay? Maybe some amount of just being able to get their work done without necessarily being able to do it for the benefit of humanity or for the benefit of the whole world, okay? It's enough for them to survive. It's a low-ish kind of intellect, a self-ish kind of intellect. So again, since we spoke about selfishness a little while back, if you look again at the colors and the tints over here, you'll notice that there are splotches, okay? Darker colors, darker shades, which are moving in, moving around, okay? The selfish part, again, swirling about inside, which means a low kind of intellect, a person with a low level of intelligence will be self-serving. They will be thinking only about themselves or maybe their immediate family or immediate loved ones, and not really moving forward for the benefit of the world in general. So immediately from that, from the low kind of intellect, comes the kind of person who is pretty prideful. They don't know many things. They know very little, or they don't even want to learn more. They don't want to be taught more things, but they're confident that they're absolutely sure that what they know is the correct thing. Have you come across people like this? You can't win in any arguments against them. You tell them something, you explain something logically to them, and they're like, no, 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 that's not true. I don't care if you've spoken to a doctor and a physicist and a scientist. What I read on WhatsApp was the truth. Okay, what they showed on that YouTube channel or the forward I received, that is the truth. And they have conspiracy theories and other ideas. Okay, here these kind of people are completely closed off to learning new things. And they're so convinced that they are correct that they will take any opportunity to explain their point of view to other people and not really be very caring about whether the other people understand or not. That's why the color of pride is such an aggressive kind of orange. Okay, pride is very divisive. Now, if you compare to your knowledge of advanced pranic healing and you think of the color orange, you can see some of the effects of pride. Okay, what does pride do? Pride makes people very arrogant. Pride is when people start hurting other people or they are insulting to other people, and they believe that what they know, what they think, what they say, and what they do are the ultimate truth. Okay, the reward of pride is a spiritual fall. So if you think about it in terms of the rainbows, okay, if you think of the Vibgyor, you've got violet on one side and you got red on the other side. Okay, so a person with a lot of high spirituality, with a lot of high intellect, suddenly becomes very prideful. Then from that violet, boom, they've gone down to the red. They've gone down to pride and they've fallen. So even in the way the natural world is structured and surrounded, we get hints of the divine plan if we take the time to observe and look. Okay. So there's a question over here. If you like certain colors, is that because you have those qualities in you? Well, yes and no. Okay. When we're talking colors over here, these are the colors of light we're talking about, not pigments. Like for instance, I might be wearing I might be wearing a black shirt right now, but I'm pretty sure that I don't have any malice in me, which is what you see in the bottom right corner. All right. Or maybe I do. I don't know. If you like certain colors, it could just be that they evoke certain feelings or emotions in you. If you've got the Crystal Healing book by Master Choa Kok Sui, Pranic Crystal Healing, then there's more details on what pigments, which is the colors, physical colors, represent. While here, when we talk about colors, we are pretty exclusively talking about light, okay? White light, red light, yellow light, golden light, not so much as a physical painted color. So if you like certain colors, it could be that you have that quality in you, but it's not necessary that you must have that quality in you, okay? Does that answer your question? Okay, great. Moving on. Now, on the third row, and of course the fourth row, if you look from sympathy and adaptability, these are shades of green over here. So why sympathy? Why adaptability? Sympathy is the color, given the color green, because it makes you very flexible, okay? You flow, you move around, when you have certain ideas and thoughts about someone else, but you see their condition and you're filled with compassion, then you break down your own internal limitations. You break down your own internal calcified beliefs and ideas. You kind of wipe it off. And then you say, okay, I feel sympathy towards you. How can I help you? How can I be of assistance? So the color sympathy is given the color green over here because it represents flexibility. It's no surprise that the color green is in the center of the electromagnetic spectrum. You got reds on one side, the warm colors, you got violets and blues, the cool colors on the other side, and right in between, harmonizing both the two, you got beautiful green. The color of nature is green, okay? Greenery. If you look at greenery, you automatically feel a certain amount of soothing, inner peace, inner calmness. Why? Because it has an effect on your sympathetic nervous system. Okay, we have the nervous system, we've got the active nervous system, we've got the sympathetic nervous system, and of course the parasympathetic nervous system. It has an effect on the sympathetic nervous system, which has an immediate de-stressing quality. So if ever you are in a situation where you're feeling riled up or upset or irritated, simply spending some time in nature, in greenery, can cause you to feel de-stressed and relaxed. In fact, it might have such an effect on your aura that since you start generating the energy of sympathy, the persons who upset you in the first place, they might start behaving sympathetically to you. So the point of these particular colors is not simply on the quality that you have in your system, but also the kind of quality that others might be evoked by looking at you or by interacting with you. Why? Because like energies attract. And as like energies attract, we generate more of these colors and textures in our system, other people start attracting those to us. Which is why if we look at the immediate one below it, adaptability, adaptability is when we are able to go to a situation and use it to our advantage so that we can survive. Maybe not just survive, but also thrive and succeed, have great health, have great happiness, have great relationships, even great prosperity. But adaptability also has a slightly negative connotation to it in the fact that it's competitive. For instance, if you have three people who are fighting for the same position in a certain job, the person who is the most adaptable will get the job. But what will happen to the other two people? They might either quit, they might stay, they might take a pay cut, they'll not be very happy. That's kind of what happens in a job scenario. So if you're adaptable, then yes, you have sympathy, but at the same time, you don't want to hurt yourself. Okay, some people with a lot, who have a very big heart, with a very giving heart, with a very generous heart, they have so much sympathy that they'll take the shirt off their back and give it to the poor persons or to the suffering people, and it's like, okay, you know what, I'm just helping them out, my good karma. Okay, so these people are sometimes treated like a doormat. Why? Because their heart is way, way, way bigger. Okay, and their solar plexus, which is the chakra for lower emotions, but at the same time for self-interest, taking care of healthy self-interest, that kind of doesn't take over. But in the case of adaptability, they have a balance between genuine, complete sympathy and also healthy self-interest. So they're able to help other people, but they're also able to help themselves without getting hurt. All right? So that takes care of sympathy and adaptability. But if you look one shade lower in the same column, from sympathy to adaptability becomes selfishness, which means if a person is not so adaptable that they do not have any more sympathy, they become selfish. Okay, where they say, you know what, I don't care about spirituality, I don't care about sympathy, I don't want to hurt you, but at the same time I'm just looking out for me. So then this becomes a brownish, muddy, red-ish kind of color. Okay, that's selfishness. So if you look at the color of sympathy and you look at the color of selfishness, you see that the color of adaptability is kind of like a mixture of the two. You notice that? So you can be very sympathetic, you can have a little bit of selfishness, which will make you adaptable, or you can completely forego all sympathy and you just simply become selfish. So for those people who often have a lot of anger, a lot of judgment and hatred in their systems, they tend to be a very selfish persons also, who are thinking only about themselves. Now, I'm sharing a personal story with you. Some months back, I had this client who had developed a form of cancer, okay, throat cancer to be specific. And he's a fairly successful man. He's a very successful man, and he's got his family, okay, it's a big family, everyone's happy, everyone's settled, everyone's earning well, so no problems. But this guy, he kind of likes to really dominate his wife, okay, and his son. He's just very, very hard in his interactions with them. But when he's interacting with other people, with maybe his clients, with his business partners, or even with other extended members in the family, he tends to be very, he's a very gentlemanly person. He's got a lot of knowledge, he's got a lot of good ideas. But when it comes very specifically to the cases of his wife and son, this man suddenly becomes a very hard, harsh kind of guy. Okay. And this continued for years and years and years and years. And then one fine day, they find out that he's got throat cancer. Just like that, throat cancer. Okay. So for those of us who've worked with a little bit of karma, who've read these things, it becomes kind of apparent as to why this kind of thing might have happened, because he's always generating these angry thoughts, these negative ideas, and he's always exploding it out to those particular people who he lives with, who he spends the maximum time with. So the karma of that came back. Now, the good news is he's an intelligent person. He did service, he did tithing. Within, I think, 2 months, the cancer went into complete remission. Okay. And since then, he has done character building, he has done purifications, and he behaves in a manner which is a lot kinder, which is a lot more sympathetic towards his immediate family members. So from complete selfishness, he went on to more adaptability. He became a little more adaptable. Sometimes he has traces of sympathy, but for the most part, he's an adaptable kind of man who has traces of sympathy, but he also keeps his own self taken care of. So this grid, as you can see, the colors are organized in a lateral fashion as well as a vertical fashion, which shows us the gradation of colors, habits, and tendencies into what a person can become. For instance, if you look at adaptability, okay, immediately after adaptability to the right-hand side, you've got jealousy. From that greenish moss green kind of color, it becomes a red color. If you look on the left plate, it's a decidedly a brown color with complete red streaks, okay, like red colored rain falling down. And it has these, other colors and splotches of red and black and various other shades which are floating about inside it. So jealousy, okay, quick question. What is the difference between jealousy and envy? Now, if you look on this entire slide, you'll see that the color envy is not written anywhere. So, question, what's the difference between jealousy and envy? Envious is positive, jealousy is negative. Okay, can you give an example of this? Both are similar. Okay, what else? emulating a person. Okay, a mentor is envious, all right? Okay, so it's something like this. Let me try to explain the best way I understand. Jealousy is when you have something and you don't want other people to have it. Okay, so someone might have a new car, or they can have a beautiful house, or they may be even going on vacation, and they want to maintain their status. Okay, they don't want other people to buy the same car, they don't want other people to go to the same place on vacation. This is a person who's jealous. They jealously guard their possessions. Okay, so if you look at the color of jealousy, okay, it's also like a jail. Okay, it holds things together. Okay, you want to keep things inside. Envy is when you see what the other person has and then you desire it. So I see someone who's got a new phone, okay, the latest iPhone maybe, and I want that, but I don't have the money to get it, or I don't have the resources to get it, and I just want it, I keep wanting it. I am envious. The other person who notices my envy and he doesn't want me to have an iPhone either, that person is jealous. So usually jealousy and envy tend to go hand in hand, side by side. A person demonstrates envy towards another person, and that person, if they're not generous, well, they become jealous. So that's the difference between jealousy and envy. You are jealously guarding of your own possessions, while you can be envying other people's possessions. Now, when I say you, I don't mean you're all very nice, kind people. That's what I learned when I started interacting with people over here. Okay, so it's not personal thing. Sorry if I meant that. So jealousy over here, and then if you look just below jealousy with all the red streaks, it becomes almost completely red. Okay, the color is similar to the color of pride, which is on the second row and the last column. Okay, the color of pride, but avarice is a little darker. It's a little more shades of brown or black inside. What is avarice? Avarice is greed. So much greed, unsustainable greed, that they just want to hurt other people to get what they want. Okay, a person may be greedy if they go to a restaurant, okay, and they eat everything on their plate. Okay, but it can be avarice if they don't share their own food, but they take samples of everyone else's food from the other plate also. Okay, you have people like that. They go to five or six friends, they go to a restaurant, they ask this one guy, hey, what do you want to eat? No, I'm not hungry, I don't want to eat anything. But when other people's food arrives, he starts taking all their other foods and starts eating it on their own. That is a type of avarice. Okay, it's a type of greed. It's also probably a type of gluttony, but nothing that pranic psychotherapy can't take care of. So that's avarice. Avarice, as it moves on to the right, the color becomes very red. Anger. It's pretty self-explanatory. You see a person, when they get angry, they become red. You heard the saying, seen red with anger, boiling with anger. It's always red colored. Okay, even in that movie, what was that? The movie on emotions. There was this movie sometime back. You had this emotions which are floating about, and this particular character of anger, they were always red in color. That's what happens. A lot of red prana gets generated. A lot of anger. It's heat. It's hot. Okay, a person who is angry is called hot-headed. Okay, and it's not just mental heat, it's physically hot too. A person who's angry, they look flushed. Okay, they look red. Yeah, you feel the heat too. That's right. So that's what happens with anger. So all these emotions which are on the bottom left part of the screen, it goes from selfishness, which is I am serving myself, I am taking care of myself. Okay, I don't want to have anything to do with you. And it moves on to, if you don't take care of me, I'm going to cause you some damage. So adaptable person can become jealous. How can adaptability turn into jealousy? Well, suppose a person wants a job. Okay, they're going for a rank with more pay, better hours, better perks, and their competitor is also ready for the same job. But now they want to prevent this guy from succeeding. So then the adaptable person, because of his thought process, becomes a very jealous person. And then he becomes very selfish, thinking, no, I'm the only person who deserves this job. All right. And therefore, he starts acting in a very greedy manner maybe sabotaging the career of his friends, of his colleagues to get that particular place. So the selfishness becomes greed, becomes avarice, becomes anger, and it just causes a lot of pain for everybody. So we have a question. So can we see in this picture from left to right, the polarity of energy, where the top to bottom is the gradation of energy? So the polarity and gradation of energies of thought forms plus emotions is different. Yes, to a large extent, that is a very brilliant observation. You're right. From left to right, the energy goes from one pole to the other pole, the good pole to the negative pole, where from the top to bottom, you could say it is a gradation or the intensity. But more than that, if there's another part you'd like to look at, if you look at the top left corner from high spirituality and then go diagonally downstairs, okay, you go from high spirituality down to intellect, to affection, to fear, and then malice. So that left to right descent over there is the polar or gradational change, as you have so beautifully termed it. When a person who's extremely high spiritual, they can also have a lot of high intellect. They can also have a lot of unselfish affection. So very good qualities so far. But boom, there comes some fear. And now this person uses his spiritual power, uses his mind, and uses his compassion to hurt other people. So really, it's not simply something that goes left to right or top to bottom. You can trace a path, a person's character, from one to the other. In fact, I would go so far as to say that if you notice a certain pattern in some clients, in some people, you can pretty much get or extrapolate an idea of what they're suffering from and what other things they might be going through later on. So a person who has a strong intellect, okay, say they have a lot of strong intellect and they have devotion to a noble ideal, they might turn that into a selfish kind of affection, which when tinged with fear becomes something that takes them into depression. I mean, I'm sure you've noticed this, that people who have a lot of intellect, people who are super, 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 super intelligent, they're very prone to depression. Have you noticed this? Or maybe you've experienced it yourself. Okay. A little bit of fear tinged with any of the positive things can lead to some pretty problematic situations, depression being one of them. So mental health in today's day and age, where talking about mental health is so important, as pranic healers, as spiritual people, as people on the spiritual path, it becomes our responsibility to understand the mechanics of what is happening and where things are going wrong so that we can take it and address it and make things better. Okay. Whew. All right. Any more questions? Otherwise, we'll just quickly cover this particular slide and move on to other less colorful slides. All right. Affection and anger. What is the distinction? Pure affection? Right. Let's now go on to this part of the screen. Okay. These last 9 or 12 which are there. So we were covering sympathy. Okay. Sympathy moves on to the right hand side, which is a love for humanity. Okay. If you look at the color over here on the left hand side of the page, love for humanity shares a lot of color similarities with high spirituality, which makes sense because if the person is very spiritual, they will have divine love for all of God's creations. Okay, not just all of humanity, but for all plants, animals, even crystals. Although to be fair, I know a lot of people who love crystals more than they love other people. They like their gems and jewels and diamonds and rubies. Oh well, people. Okay, so you have love for humanity, okay, which as one gradation lower becomes unselfish affection. What's that? It's like, I don't love all of humanity. I love people, okay? It's not that I just love everybody. I love people, and that's about it. So if you have a lot of love for humanity, maybe there's a disaster prone area or somewhere where there's been a natural calamity and you go out to help those people, okay? You're risking your own health, you're spending your own money, your own time and energy to go out and help those people. So you have a love for humanity. You've got this pink color that's floating around you, which by the way, you will notice if you've seen, again, religious drawings and depictions of the saints, they have this pink, purplish pink kind of color, which is surrounding them. Why? Because they've got spirituality and they've also got love for other people. Okay, love for humanity. Unselfish affection, now this is the color which is bang in the center of this entire grid, okay? It's smack in the center of all of these other colors. Unselfish affection, and this typically is the color of 14th February. Happy Valentine's Day. I don't know if I've got this correct. Happy Valentine's Day. Or that's the color, the bubbly baby pink of unselfish affection. It's the color of love for mother and child, or spouse, assuming that spouses get along with each other, okay? Or a boyfriend and girlfriend, or boyfriend and boyfriend, or girlfriend and girlfriend, whatever works, in the initial phases of their relationship, okay? When they don't really want to possess the other person, they're not jealous of the other person, nor are they envious. They just want to interact with love and affection. That's the color. So unselfish affection, if a person has this, they can move up, okay, with their strong intellect, and create a devotion to a noble idea, and they can move into high spirituality. Or if a person has unselfish affection and they go down, they will do things, deceitful things, in order to retain the affection. For example, emotional blackmail. I'm sure you've experienced this in your own life, or through any dramas which you might have seen on television, or in the lives of people around you, that the relationship started pretty nicely. There was a lot of love and affection, but the other person became a little psychologically manipulative. Like, you're not texting me on time, or why did you talk to this person or that person, or why can't I get you for 5 days in a row? Small things, which starts to create a little bit of deceit, okay, which blurs the perception of the other person. And that creates this problem. As this problem gets created, deceit, it generates anger. Why are you not spending time with me? Why don't you give me 25 flowers every single day? Why haven't you written over? Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating, but it creates anger, okay? So greed leads to anger, deceit leads to anger, jealousy leads to anger, and right beside unselfish affection, if you look, it becomes selfish affection. And that's pretty self-explanatory. Again, if you look at the color of selfish affection over there, you'll notice it has got these dark colored clouds which are swirling around inside. So selfish affection is when you want to possess, when you don't want to give the other person, when you just want to take, and take. Unselfish gives. Selfish claws, holds on. Okay? Whereas if that selfish, unselfish energy is gotten rid of, it becomes pure. So there's no selfishness, neither is there any unselfishness, it's simply pure. And that pure is the other color which the clairvoyants of the greeting card industry have capitalized on, is that nice red pink shade of love. So on the one side of the spectrum, you've got sympathy, and on the other side of the spectrum, you've got pure affection. And in the center, you've got sweet little unselfish affection, taking care, minding its own business. Okay? As pure affection becomes impure, as there's fear, it can lead to depression, which then can lead to malice. Now, of course, some of the elements over here, they're grouped together by colors. You cannot necessarily say that avarice leads to sensuality or anger leads to sensuality, whatever the pronunciation is. What is sensuality over here? It means an addiction to satisfying the senses, okay? Typically, in terms of mainstream media or newspapers, a sensual person is a person who tends to have a lot of unrestrained sexual desires, okay? But sensuality is not simply sex oriented. It leads to the satisfaction of any of the senses. So if there's a person who loves to watch movies all the day, okay, maybe just chilling out, watching their favorite live streaming app, they're giving in to the sense of sight all day without taking care of their other work. So that's a form of sensuality. A person who loves to just listen to music all the time. I mean, you've seen these people, they've always got their music on and they've got their jam going on and they're like, hey, listen to me, don't cross the road, you're gonna get hit. And I'm like, I'm just listening to the music. You know people like this. If you've got teenagers, there you go. Or if you've been a teenager yourself, which of course you have been, you know that there was that phase when loud music and listening to music was that phase in life, which is also another part of sensuality. Of course, there's also gluttony, where they're satisfying the sense of taste all the time, okay? Very greedy, very avaricious. So you've got that form of sensuality as well. Okay, and of course the sense of touch, okay, which is where the sexual connotation comes to it for obvious reasons. So all of these colors, if you notice, anything which generates a strong emotional response tends to have these warm red and pink colors. Anything with a strong emotional response, physical response, tends to have this red or pink color. Anything with a mental response, an intellectual response, tends to have a yellowish kind of color. Okay. Anything with a more spiritual response, with a more divine response, tends to have a bluish, violetish kind of color. Anything to do with flexibility tends to be greenish, and anything to do with the outright negative emotions, like fear, depression, deceit, these tend to be gray and black. Okay. So just to recap, sensual, or not sensual stuff, but stuff which is intellectual is yellowish, stuff which is spiritual is bluish, stuff which is more emotional in response tends to be reddish or pinkish, stuff which is fearful or outright negative tends to be on the gray side. So concluding this, and green of course to deal with flexibility. Thank you. Green to do with flexibility and getting along with everything. Concluding this entire passage, on the bottom right corner, you've got pure jet black, the black of malice. What is malice? Malice is when someone doesn't want other people to be successful, doesn't want other people to be happy, doesn't want other people to be healthy. In fact, they'll do whatever they can to hurt the other person. Okay, you may have come across certain family members or certain relatives, friends, wherever. They are simply so negative. Anything that you do, okay, oh, you've done this, you've done that, I'm sure you could have done better. Who did you bribe? Who did you talk to? They're very hurtful, okay? They're very sharp, very, very painful in their talk, okay? And you've probably done a lot of forgiveness with these people. Maybe you're still undergoing the process of forgiveness with these people. Why? Because they're so malicious. They want to hurt you. There's obviously some karmic factor, but karma is not the subject of discussion over here. We're simply dealing with thought forms, because the person can be malicious towards a person or a group of persons, or they can be malicious in general. For instance, if you look at the top right, the selfish religious feeling, the color is not very different from the color of malice. Okay, selfish religious feeling on the top right, extreme top right, and extreme bottom right, you've got malice. Now, again, I'm not being politically correct here. Just think back in history. Religious persecution was a major thing. Just think of the number of innocent people slaughtered in the name of religion. In fact, it's still going on to this day and age. It's still going on. And that's why we need to do more blessings, more of the great invocation, more healing, as this spirit of malice can be removed. Sorry? Oh, okay. Right. So the spirit of malice exists amongst the whole of the planet, especially when it comes to religious persecution. It's a selfish religious feeling. My religion is better than yours. You are an infidel. You are a traitor. You are whatever. Okay. Even in the world of Harry Potter, you've got the concept of the blood traitors and the mudbloods. Oh, by the way, we'll be talking a little bit about Harry Potter more and more as this goes by, because some of the thought forms are pretty magical. Okay, but that's probably not for this session, it's for the other one. Today's session is almost drawing to a close. So simply again, to conclude this particular slide, you can go from high spirituality, high intellect, and unselfish affection, but you may develop a lot of fear, and the person can become outright malicious. And this is what they mean by having a spiritual fall. In the books of Master Choa Kok Sui and the Golden Lotus Sutras, he's mentioned that the reward of pride is failure. Okay, of a spiritual person or a disciple who does not behave in a way expected of him, doesn't produce the results, does not help other people, but becomes selfish, they become so much pride, so much of a big head that they fall. And these people, how are they characterized? By constantly criticizing other people. If you've seen a person who claims to be super, super spiritual and then say, oh, why are you charging so much money? You should not charge money for spiritual courses. You should not do this. Why are you taking donations? Why? I'm sure you've come across all these people. I'm not going into details about them, but that color, malice, that selfish feeling, that fear, depression, that selfishness, all of these together, those colors combine to create malice. Very interestingly, black is the absence or the complete absorption of all colors. White is a reflection of all colors. So, in secondary school physics, science, they teach us that an object which appears to be blue is blue because it absorbs all colors but reflects blue light. Hence, it appears to be blue. An object which reflects red and absorbs everything else is a red colored object. So white colored object is one that reflects light, that keeps shining all kinds of light. And that's a spiritual person because they keep radiating light. A person who is dark, who's become dark, is a person who's absorbing all kinds of colors in need for generating their own light. So if you find a person with malice, with hatred, with pain, that is the ideal person for whom you can practice spirituality and bless them, because they are the ones who need it the most. There's a beautiful quotation that someone I know said, probably quoted from somewhere else, that the persons who need love the most will ask for it in the most unloving of ways. The person who needs love the most will often ask for love in the most unloving of ways. So, moving to the conclusion of these slides, we are going to talk about man, okay, or human beings, as a thinking person, all right? And in this one, they're giving the energetic anatomy, where they say that man is in a body composed of innumerable combinations of the subtle matter of the mental plane. And this body is more or less refined and organized for the functions, okay? What are the functions? The person's intellectual development and the mental body itself, giving it the ability of thinking very fast, of radiating light, of sharing knowledge, and becoming an extraordinary mentally beautiful person. I'd like you to think of a person who you consider to be extremely knowledgeable, okay? Someone who shares their love, their wisdom, their compassion all the time, okay? Especially their intellect. Now, of course, we as being students of Prana, we don't have to look too far, okay? You think of that one person and the amount of love and compassion that you've received. And in your mind, when you think of this person, automatically you get an image of light, okay? Of a lot of radiating light. This also is a physical manifestation of the development of the mental body, because as the person's intellect becomes more evolved, more developed, it radiates more light. And every thought, every pure thought, every energetic thought that they generate gives a rise to more such beautiful thoughts, which are correlated, okay? And the colors, they become rich. And the example that the book cites is like there's a waterfall and sunlight strikes the waterfall. It creates that rainbow, that Vibgyor rainbow, okay? And that color itself is raised to the nth degree of vividity, of vividness, of delicateness of color. So a body of such a person, the mental body of such a person, is itself shaped by the nature of the vibrations. So when they say thoughts become things, as you think of lofty ideals, of higher ideals, you yourself become a better person. In the pranic healing lingo, Master Chua says, do not meditate on those who have hurt you or those who have aggravated you, okay? Meditate on the Guru. Meditate on the higher beings. It's a very profound knowledge, but expressed in a very simple way, that as my mental body focuses on the teacher and the higher beings, it attracts a similar quality of energy, and the vibrations of the body raises itself also, okay? From the mental body, we come down one step lower, closer, which is the desire body or the astral body, which we should be talking about in subsequent sessions. Now, the mental body has its own sets of colors and other things. The astral body gives rise to a second class of entities or patterns, which are similar in their general constitution to the thought forms which we've already described, but they're limited to the astral plane, okay? And the generation of these thoughts tend to be a little more sense-oriented, okay? The words they use is the animal nature, which means basically lower nature. So as you desire something, as you want something, it's of course your astral body, okay? As you think something, as you are talking about upliftment and beneficence of humanity, it is the mental body. So the vibrations in the astral body are set up, and they radiate outwards again. So you notice there's a similarity in the way the mental body and the astral body operates, that a vibration is created when a thought is there, and this vibration radiates outwards. And as it radiates outwards, it starts attracting similar vibrations to it. Okay, so a person who has been thinking, suppose just before going to sleep, the person has been thinking of a loved one, okay, or maybe a very old friend, a lost friend. And in their dream, they suddenly have this dream of this loved one who appears. Why is that happening? Because the vibrations of the thought and that emotional charge by the desire body, it goes out into the astral world, into the inner world, and it attracts the similar energy of the other person. So it may well have happened that sometimes you think of a person and the other person just calls you. That's at the physical level. It's because at the mental level and at the astral level, you set up the vibrations, which then radiated outwards, which attracted that person back to you. Okay, that is the basic mechanism under which the body operates. Now, of course, if that is the cause, then will be effects. And there are two effects of thought. Okay, each definite thought produces a double effect, which is a vibration and a floating form. Okay, what does this mean? You see, the vibration part we just covered, that when you think of someone or something, you send out waves. Like if you drop a stone into a pond, it sends out waves. But the form is what you thought about. So if someone thought about a friend, you get a floating form or floating image of the friend. Or if someone's thought about money, they generate a floating form of the money. Okay. So when a clairvoyant person sees this, tunes in and they see it, this thought form, the thought that they've generated, first appears to be a vibration. Okay. And this vibration could be a simple vibration or a complex vibration. If you go back to the previous slides, if you remember, you saw some of the simpler vibrations generated in sand, and you also saw some of the more complex vibrations. Now, if these thoughts are very simple, absolutely simple, then there's only one vibration. Okay, and only one type of mental matter is affected. We spoke about mental matter and other matters in the solar system as their various particles and other things. So the mental body is composed of several degrees of density, okay, which are arranged according to planes and subplanes, which we already spoke of and learned about in the solar system. We'll cover that more if we talk about the mental body or the astral body. But as simple as a thought is, it affects only a simple part of the mental plane. Okay, the more complex the thought is, the more layers of the mental plane it affects. All right, so the basic mechanism we need to know is every time we have a definite thought, a very definite thought, it creates a vibration and it creates a form. Depending on how clear your thought is, the form is either solid or it's not. Okay, now it must be kind of emphasized that the majority of human thoughts or the human thought process are not really simple. Okay, they are really floating and fragmented. So if you've ever seen in any movie these psychics, okay, Professor X from the X-Men movies, okay, he is tuning into this person and he's had this thought and he can hear the person's thought clearly like a radio. That doesn't happen. Because even you, as you are sitting around over here listening to me speak and hopefully being really entertained, okay, you are also aware simultaneously of the sounds in your environment, of your phone or your laptop in front of you, of you sitting in your chair, of the fan around you, and maybe also even the time. So your mind is not just absorbing one line of thought, there are 4, 5, 6 simultaneous thoughts which are going around. Okay, so the majority of human thoughts are not simple at all. They're absolutely not simple. Okay, so the thought, does it become a form only when it is verbalized? Yes, we will get to that a little more in the subsequent sessions on how to make really or how really concretized thought forms are generated. For now, we're simply dealing with the mechanics of how they are created. Okay, suffice to say that when we have channelized thoughts, when we have focused thoughts, the thought form is more definite. When we have vague thoughts, the thought forms are less definite. And we shall see this with a very simple example, okay, as you got here. This is a thought form which represents vague, pure affection. Vague, pure affection. Please make a note of the colors and the shape. You'll notice that it looks like cotton candy. Maybe that's why in all those movies they show that when a person goes on a first date, they give themselves cotton candy. Huh, who knows? Well, for what matters, vague pure affection looks like this cloud which is floating about. The edges are not very defined. It's light. The center of it is a little darker. The colors are richer, more saturated. Okay, so beautiful cotton candy, vague pure affection, which means I like you, but I'm not sure how much I like you. So vague pure affection. Moving forward, you've got its cousin, or maybe not, vague selfish affection. Okay, in vague selfish affection, you've got the colors where the outside is also like cotton candy. Okay, it's floating about, but inside you can see in more detail that claw-like look. You notice how it looks like a claw or a hook, where I want you, I'm not going to let you go, right? It's selfish. There is affection because you still got that pink color, but there is that holding on to thing. Okay, so when you think of something, okay, and you just thought about it without verbalizing, the thought form gets created. All right, so the two effects, that the vibration is set up, and two, the definiteness of it. If you have simply verbalized, if you just thought of it once, the thought form appears in your aura. Okay, if you don't give it additional thought, after some time the thought form just loses power and vanishes, it disintegrates. But if you keep giving it energy, okay, then the thought form becomes more and more created. The thought wave, we'll get into that again later, the thought wave is created. Okay, so thank you, doctor, for pointing that out. Let's just quickly compare vague and selfish affection with vague and pure affection, and then from the previous slides you compare the colors. You can now correlate that vague selfish affection has this kind of color and shape. Vague pure affection, this lovely cotton candy, has that color and shape. So it's not simply the color and texture, but the form itself, the shape itself, which plays a very important role. Hence, thought form. Otherwise, it would just be thought shapes or thought clouds or thought. But here, it's a thought form. And that brings us to the conclusion of today's session, where we've touched upon what are thought forms, how are they created, what are the various colors and shapes which are associated with them. In subsequent sessions, which is for the next week, we'll go into much greater detail about individual thought forms, their shape, their appearance. Maybe we can also do some extra in-depth study on these various colors and shapes. So thank you today for everyone for joining in. I hope you found this session useful. If you did, do please leave a comment on Facebook and Instagram so that other people may be encouraged to participate and also share in this knowledge sharing. The more you write comments on our social media, on the Facebook page, on the Instagram page, the more other people get to know about this. Okay, so you create a thought form of knowledge radiating out from Prana World. Okay, and it helps other people to learn more. It attracts more and more people. And who knows, maybe you get the good karma of sharing more and more knowledge too. So please do leave your comments on our Facebook and Instagram pages. The link maybe on the WhatsApp group. On the WhatsApp group, we'll share the link for the social media pages. Next week, we'll see you again for the second session. Thank you very much for all being here. Let's please end with a closing invocation. Take a deep breath. I'm not the body, and I'm definitely not the thought forms. So smile. Inhale slowly, exhale slowly. To the Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, to my spiritual teacher, Master Chua Kok Sui, to all the spiritual teachers, the holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, and spiritual helpers, to my higher self, to my divine nature, to the angels of light, love, and power, to the angels of wisdom. Thank you for sharing this knowledge and information with us, that we may use it to become better instruments, better channels for spreading the light, for greater understanding, for alleviating the sufferings of humanity, for healing Mother Earth. We thank you. We thank you in full faith. Be aware of the top of your crown. Send beautiful high spiritual feelings into your aura, radiate it out to your spiritual teacher. Imagine your spiritual teacher in front of you. Atma Namaste. Thank you for your blessings. Thank you. May God bless you. Feel the peace, then gently open your eyes with a big smile. Hopefully you found the session useful. The talk will be available on YouTube. We'll be sharing the link in some time. All the links will be shared on the WhatsApp group. So thank you everyone for being with us, and see you next week. Have a great day. Atma Namaste.